Emily didn't think much of it. Just a lost wallet near the produce aisle and a quick trip to customer service. But 24 hours later, a sealed letter arrived from Washington, D.C. Her family stood frozen on the porch, reading words that would take them from aisle 6, straight to the White House. Hi there. Welcome to the Smart Intelligence Channel. Before we dive into today's story, I'd love it if you could hit that subscribe button and drop a like. Wishing you and your family good health and happiness. Now, let's get started. The day had started like any other in Millstone. Emily's mom, Lisa, packed her a turkey sandwich with apple slices and a juice box, kissed her forehead, and sent her off to school with her bright pink backpack bouncing behind her. Lisa never imagined that by sundown, a phone call would leave her speechless. Back at home, the envelope still sat on the kitchen table, off-white with a golden seal, and her family's name handwritten in dark blue ink. Lisa had checked the return address 3 times, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, Washington, D.C. It wasn't a prank. It couldn't be. The call that followed an hour later confirmed what none of them could believe. They had been invited to the White House. Wait, the White House? Emily's father, Marcus, had repeated the words like they were foreign. As in, the White House? Lisa just nodded, still clutching the cordless phone to her chest. They didn't understand why. Not yet. But they were told to expect an official email with flight arrangements for Thursday, accommodations provided for the weekend, and a private tour scheduled with someone very important. Marcus, a mechanic who hadn't taken a vacation in 8 years, stared at his calloused hands and shook his head in disbelief. I guess I'll need to find a clean shirt. When Emily got home that afternoon, Lisa sat her down at the kitchen table. Sweetheart, she said gently, do you remember the wallet you found at the grocery store? Emily tilted her head, chewing the last bite of her snack. Yeah, the black one? I gave it to the lady at the front. Lisa nodded, brushing a strand of hair from her daughter's forehead. Well, the man who lost that wallet? He's not just anybody. Emily's eyes widened. He's not mad, is he? No, baby, Lisa chuckled. He's the senior advisor to the president. Emily blinked. The president? Of what? Lisa smiled, tears in her eyes. The United States. The next few days felt like a dream. Emily's story made it to the front page of the Millstone Gazette. Reporters began calling. A neighbor offered to loan them carry-on luggage. Someone else dropped off a dress bag for Emily. Inside was a cream-colored dress with a navy sash and tiny pearl buttons, just in case she meets someone fancy. By Thursday morning, their family of 3 stood nervously at Gate B6 of the Indianapolis International Airport, staring at their boarding passes. Emily clutched her stuffed rabbit, Mr. Buttons, as tightly as she could. She had never been on an airplane. The farthest she'd ever traveled was to her aunt's house in Kentucky, 127 miles away. The flight was smooth. The in-flight meal was less so. Marcus pretended to enjoy the lukewarm chicken with mashed potatoes, while Lisa quietly pocketed extra napkins, still in disbelief that they were even allowed on the plane for free. But none of that compared to the moment their black SUV pulled through the east gate of the White House and parked beside a garden so beautiful it looked like a painting. A tall man in a navy suit greeted them with a kind smile and led them inside. The building smelled like history. Polished wood, fresh flowers, and something almost sacred. Emily's eyes grew huge as they walked past portraits of past presidents, the chandeliers sparkling above them like constellations. She looked so small in the vast hallway, her patent leather shoes echoing on the marble floor. They were ushered into the Oval Office. Emily stepped through the doorway and stopped cold. There, standing beside the resolute desk, was the President of the United States. He wasn't behind a podium. He wasn't surrounded by cameras. He was just a man, tall, kind-eyed, and smiling as if he'd known Emily her whole life. You must be Emily Parker, he said, kneeling so they were eye level. It's an honor to meet you. Emily clutched Mr. Buttons and gave a tiny nod. The President reached into a drawer and pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was a golden pin in the shape of an eagle, with the words Citizen of Honor engraved beneath its wings. This is for you, he said, because what you did matters. You reminded us that doing the right thing, even when no one's looking, is what makes this country great. Tears streamed silently down Lisa's face as she held Marcus's hand. Emily looked at the pin, then at the president. "Are you sure?" she asked softly. "I just gave something back." The president smiled, "And in doing that, you gave us all something to believe in." Millstone, Indiana wasn't the kind of place that made headlines. It was the kind of town where people still waved from front porches, where gas was always 10 cents cheaper than the next county over, and where every kid knew not to touch the cornfield fence behind old Mr. Hargrove's property. It was a place with just one traffic light, 2 family diners, and a population sign that hadn't been updated in over a decade. Nestled on the corner of Walnut and 5th stood a modest 2-story home with fading blue shutters and a worn swing on the front porch. That was where the Parkers lived. Emily Parker was 10 years old, a 4th grader at Millstone Elementary, and the kind of child who always returned her library books on time, sometimes early. She wasn't loud or flashy. She didn't crave attention. What she did crave was kindness, and that's exactly what her parents had raised her on. Her mother, Lisa, worked as a cashier at the local pharmacy, clocking in every morning at 8 o'clock sharp, Monday through Saturday. She wore her name tag like armor and kept peppermints in her apron pocket for the kids who came in crying. Lisa believed in manners, hard work, and raising a daughter who knew the value of both. Her father, Marcus, was a mechanic at Floyd's Auto and Tire just outside town. He stood 6'2", with rough hands and a permanent smudge of oil under his fingernails, no matter how many times he washed them. He wasn't the talking type, but he built Emily a wooden dollhouse when she was 6 that had a working porch light powered by a single AA battery. That told her everything she needed to know about his heart. The Parkers didn't have much in the way of money, but what they lacked in wealth, they more than made up for in love and leftovers. Lisa made a mean meatloaf, and Emily could never quite finish her plate, which meant the neighbor's dog, Max, often got a surprise treat when he wandered over. Their neighborhood was quiet, lined with maple trees that turned the streets golden in fall. In the summer, kids rode their bikes in loops around the cul-de-sac, and in winter, Mr. Jacobs on the corner always shoveled the sidewalks before the sun came up. Emily's room was upstairs, second door on the left, with glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling and a bookshelf that bowed slightly in the middle from Too Many Goosebumps and American Girl books. Her favorite was a worn hardcover called The Little Engine That Could, not because of the train, but because her dad used to do all the voices. Every weekday at 3:30 p.m., Emily would step off the big yellow school bus at the end of the street, wave to Mrs. Gleason, the driver, and skip up the sidewalk to where Lisa waited with a smile and a peanut butter snack. On Saturdays, they'd go grocery shopping together at Parker's Market. A name coincidence, not ownership, where Emily had memorized the aisles and always reminded her mom to use the coupon on cereal. It was during one of those trips, on a brisk October afternoon, that everything began to change. That particular Saturday, the air was crisp, around 52 degrees, and Emily had chosen her favorite hoodie, the one with a faded unicorn on the front and a grape juice stain from last Easter. The store was busy, more so than usual, and the automatic doors had a slight delay that made Lisa chuckle every time. The Parkers made their way through the produce aisle, debating apples versus pears, when Emily spotted something on the floor near the lettuce bin. It was a black leather wallet, simple but well made, with a silver money clip sticking out just enough to catch the light. Emily picked it up and looked around. No one nearby seemed to notice. "Mom," she whispered, holding it up, "someone dropped this." Lisa glanced over and nodded. "Let's take it to the front desk, sweetheart." Emily hesitated for a moment. Something about the wallet felt heavy, not just in weight, but in importance. She didn't know whose it was, but she knew it mattered. As they walked to customer service, Lisa reminded her gently, "Doing the right thing doesn't always get noticed, Emily, but it always matters." Emily nodded, gripping the wallet a little tighter. They handed it over to the clerk, who thanked them and set it aside in the lost and found. Emily never even saw the face of the man who came to claim it. At least not that day. Later that evening, back at home, Emily curled up in her favorite blanket on the couch, watching reruns of Full House while her parents did the dishes. She had no idea that her small act of honesty, barely a blip in the chaos of a normal Saturday, was about to send ripples all the way to Washington, D.C. Saturday mornings in Millstone were for grocery runs. The Parkers had their routine. Emily would grab the canvas tote bags, Lisa would clip the coupons, and Marcus, on his rare day off, would sip lukewarm coffee while checking tire pressure in the driveway. By 9:30 a.m., they were pulling into the lot at Parker's Market. The irony of the name still made Lisa smile every time. No relation, but the discount on eggs made them feel like honorary owners. Emily loved grocery trips. She'd trail behind her mom, pushing the cart half the time and skipping ahead the other half. She knew where the strawberries were, which cereal came with a toy, and which cashier gave out stickers. That morning, the store buzzed with the weekend crowd. The air outside had dipped to 55 degrees, a crisp reminder that fall was settling in. Emily wore her faded unicorn hoodie and sneakers that squeaked on the polished tile floors. She danced from aisle to aisle, bouncing slightly on her toes, trailing behind Lisa as they passed the produce section. That's when she saw it. A black leather wallet, sitting crookedly against the leg of the display where the lettuce was stacked. It looked out of place. Lost. Emily bent down to pick it up. It felt worn but solid. Real leather, with a faint smell of aftershave and receipts. She flipped it open with care. Inside was a driver's license, a credit card, and a small photograph of a woman holding a toddler near the Lincoln Memorial. "Mom," Emily called softly, holding the wallet up. Lisa turned from the bell peppers. "What's that, honey?" "A wallet. Somebody dropped it." Lisa knelt beside her. "Let's see." They checked the license. The name read Edward H. Lane, and the address listed was in Washington, D.C. Lisa let out a soft whistle. "Long way from home," she said. "Come on, let's take it to the front desk." As they approached the customer service counter, a man in a navy windbreaker rounded the corner near the bakery, looking around with urgency. He moved with the quick, practiced energy of someone used to control. But at that moment, he looked a little lost. "Excuse me," Lisa said. "Sir, are you looking for this?" The man's eyes locked onto the wallet in Emily's hands. "Yes," he breathed. "Thank you. Oh my God. Thank you." He reached for it with both hands, visibly relieved. "It was by the lettuce," Emily said quietly. "I didn't open it too much." He looked down at her, blinking a few times like trying to recalibrate. "You found it?" Emily nodded. The man's posture softened. He knelt down to her level. "You have no idea how important this was. You just saved me a disaster." Emily shrugged, fidgeting. "It's yours. You dropped it." He gave her a long look. Not the casual, polite kind, but one that seemed to really see her. This 10-year-old in squeaky shoes and a grape-stained hoodie who didn't hesitate for a second before doing the right thing. "Thank you," he said again, standing. "Both of you." Lisa smiled, brushing Emily's hair behind her ear. "We were just in the right place." The man hesitated, then reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a business card. He offered it to Lisa. "I work in government. If you ever find yourselves in D.C., give me a call." Lisa took the card out of politeness, not expecting much. It was cream-colored, thick as a postcard. She glanced down and froze. Edward H. Lane, Senior Advisor, Office of the President. By the time she looked up again, he had already disappeared into the crowd. Back at home that afternoon, the card sat on the kitchen table. Lisa didn't say much about it, but Marcus studied it with a slow shake of his head. "Probably just being polite," he said. "These people meet 1,000 folks a week." "Probably," Lisa agreed, but her hand lingered on the card longer than it should have. Emily had gone back to her books, curled up in her reading chair with Charlotte's Web. She hadn't thought about the wallet again. To her, the moment had passed. A brief interruption in a morning of errands. But far away in a quiet government building, Edward Lane sat at his desk that evening, staring at a small photograph of a girl in a unicorn hoodie taken discreetly by his aide just before they exited the store. "She had no idea who I was," he said aloud. His colleague raised an eyebrow. "What happened?" Lane set the wallet on the desk. "She found this, brought it back without a second thought, just handed it over." The colleague shrugged. "Nice kid." Lane nodded slowly. "No. Exceptional." Sunday morning sunlight poured into the Parker household like a warm whisper. The smell of maple syrup lingered in the air as Emily rinsed her cereal bowl in the sink. humming quietly to herself. She didn't notice the envelope on the doormat until she opened the door to feed Max, the neighbor's dog. It wasn't the usual white and blue mailer from the electric company or the penny saver coupon bundle. No, this envelope was thick, ivory-colored, and sealed with a golden crest she didn't recognize. An eagle with outstretched wings, clutching arrows in one claw and an olive branch in the other. "Mom," Emily called, holding it up like a rare artifact. "We got fancy mail again." Lisa dried her hands and stepped into the entryway. One glance at the seal made her heartbeat stutter. That's the presidential seal." Marcus looked up from the living room, coffee mug halfway to his lips. "You're kidding." Lisa slit the envelope open with her finger, carefully unfolding the single page inside. Her eyes moved quickly over the letter, then she read it again. Slower this time. "Read it out loud," Marcus urged. Lisa took a breath and began. "Dear Parker family, it is with great pleasure that we invite you to the White House for a private visit and recognition ceremony. Your daughter, Emily Parker, demonstrated an extraordinary act of honesty and character that reflects the very ideals we strive to instill in all citizens. We believe that such integrity should not only be commended but celebrated. Travel arrangements, accommodations, and further details will be provided by the Office of Presidential Engagement. We look forward to welcoming you to Washington, D.C. Sincerely, the Office of the President of the United States." For a moment, the kitchen was completely silent. Just the tick of the wall clock and Max barking faintly 2 houses down. Then Marcus let out a stunned chuckle. "Well, I guess that business card wasn't just for show." Lisa stared at the letter, her eyes misting. She was just doing the right thing. Emily blinked. "Am I in trouble?" That broke the tension. Lisa pulled her daughter into a tight hug, her voice thick. "No, sweetheart. You're about to be honored by the president." The phone rang 30 minutes later. A woman named Maria, speaking with a smooth DC accent, confirmed the details. A black SUV would pick them up Wednesday morning at 7 o'clock a.m. sharp. Flights had already been arranged from Indianapolis to Reagan National Airport. They'd be staying 2 nights at the Willard Hotel, a historic property just steps from the White House, Maria added. Clothing sizes were requested. "There will be press," Maria said kindly. "We want everyone to feel comfortable but presentable." Lisa hung up the phone in a daze. "I don't even own presentable," she muttered. By lunchtime, word had spread. Millstone moved fast when something extraordinary happened, and this was nothing short of it. The woman at the pharmacy register hugged Lisa. The mail carrier left a sticky note on their box. "You make us proud." Emily's teacher called, nearly in tears. "She deserves this," she said. "She always holds the door for the other kids." On Monday morning, someone left a package on their doorstep. Inside were 2 new dresses for Emily and a navy sport coat for Marcus. There was no note, just a receipt from Macy's and a sticky label that read, "In case you need a little boost, from your town." Emily didn't fully understand the magnitude of what was happening, but she could tell something important was unfolding by the way her mom stared out the window longer than usual, or how her dad trimmed his beard 3 days early. And though Emily had never even seen the White House in person, she started practicing how to curtsy, just in case. On Tuesday night, Lisa tucked her in and sat on the edge of the bed longer than usual. "You nervous?" she asked. Emily nodded. "A little." Lisa brushed hair back from her daughter's forehead. "You don't have to say anything fancy. Just be you. That's more than enough." Emily glanced toward her backpack. "Do I need to bring anything?" Lisa smiled. "Just your heart." The next morning, right on time, a gleaming black SUV rolled into the Parkers' driveway. The driver stepped out in a pressed suit, greeting them by name. "Ready for your White House debut?" Marcus adjusted his tie. Lisa clutched her purse. Emily held Mr. Buttons, her stuffed rabbit, by the ear. As they pulled out of a millstone and onto the highway, Lisa looked back through the rear window. A handful of neighbors stood by their mailboxes, waving. A few held up handwritten signs. "We love you, Emily," and "Our hometown hero." Emily pressed her face to the glass and waved back, unaware that by the time their plane landed in Washington, her story would already be making headlines across the nation. The flight from Indianapolis to Washington, D.C. lasted just under 2 hours, but for the Parkers, it felt like crossing into another world. Emily spent most of it glued to the window, watching clouds roll by like cotton stretched across the sky. She clutched Mr. Buttons in one arm, her other hand resting on the velvet pouch that held the dress Mrs. Sinclair from church had gifted her. Lisa kept looking down at her shoes, new, polished flats that pinched just a little at the toes. Marcus, in his borrowed sport coat, stared ahead, his hands folded tightly in his lap. When the plane touched down, a man in a black suit met them at the gate holding a sign, "Parker Family." He introduced himself as Thomas from the Office of Presidential Protocol and led them through a private terminal exit. Outside, a black Cadillac Escalade waited, engine purring. As the car pulled into downtown Washington, Emily's eyes widened. Everything looked massive. Columns, statues, glass buildings that shimmered like something out of a storybook. When the White House finally came into view, nestled behind black iron gates and rows of tulips, her breath caught. "There it is," Lisa whispered. Security was strict but kind. After a brief screening, they were escorted through the East Wing, their shoes echoing on the marble floors. Every hallway was lined with portraits and photographs. Marcus slowed when they passed the painting of Abraham Lincoln. The Oval Office, they were told, was waiting. Emily didn't know what to expect. She'd seen it once on television during a press conference, but standing outside the double doors, it didn't feel like a room. It felt like a moment. When they stepped inside, the first thing she noticed wasn't the desk or the chandelier. It was the man standing by the window, sleeves rolled up, smiling warmly. The president. He turned as they entered, his presence both commanding and comforting. "Emily," he said, crossing the room in long strides. "You must be the young lady I've heard so much about." Emily nodded, shyly holding out her hand. He shook it gently, then knelt to her level. "I heard you found a wallet," he said, "and instead of keeping it or walking away, you did something very special." I just gave it back," Emily replied softly. "Exactly," he said. "That's what made it so powerful." He stood and gestured for them to sit on the couches. A photographer hovered discreetly nearby. An aide placed a tray of lemonade and cookies on the side table. The president made small talk with Lisa and Marcus, asking about Millstone, about Marcus's shop, and Emily's favorite subject in school. "Reading," she said quickly, "and sometimes writing." He grinned. "That doesn't surprise me one bit." Then came the ceremony. A short introduction was read by the chief of staff, explaining the significance of Emily's action. How small moments of integrity create ripples across a country. How the spirit of America lives in its quietest citizens. The president reached into a velvet-lined box and pulled out a gold pin shaped like a soaring eagle. Beneath it, engraved in fine lettering, were the words, "Citizen of Honor." He pinned it gently to the collar of Emily's dress. "This," he said to the room, "is what America looks like at its best." Flashbulbs clicked softly. Emily blushed, eyes fixed on the eagle gleaming against her dress. After the ceremony, the president leaned close again and said, "Would you like a quick tour?" Emily nodded eagerly. They visited the rose garden, where a breeze carried the faint scent of lilacs. He showed her the Truman balcony, the state dining room, and even let her peek inside the cabinet room. "I sit here," he said, tapping a chair. "But people like you? You're the reason any of this matters." Before leaving, Emily handed him a small thank you card she'd written on the plane. It had a drawing of Mr. Buttons and a big rainbow with the words, "Thank you for being kind back." The president looked down at it, then chuckled. "You just made my whole week." As they exited the building, the press was waiting. Emily stood between her parents, blinking under the camera lights. A reporter shouted, "How does it feel to meet the president?" Emily thought for a moment, then said, "Kind of like meeting a story, but real." That night, back at the hotel, Lisa folded the pin into a silk handkerchief and tucked it safely into her purse. Marcus sat quietly, staring out the window at the glowing city skyline. Emily lay curled in bed, the day washing over her in waves. "Mom," she whispered, "do you think doing the right thing always matters?" Lisa turned off the bedside lamp and sat beside her. "I think it always matters," she said, "even when nobody sees. But sometimes, sweetheart, sometimes the whole world sees." Emily never asked for recognition. She didn't search for a camera or hope for applause. She simply saw something that wasn't hers and made it right. And somehow, that small moment, barely 30 seconds in the produce aisle, rippled through a town, a state, and even the nation's capital. The medal she received now sits in a wooden shadow box above her bookshelf, right next to Mr. Button's and her copy of Charlotte's Web. It's not something she shows off, but every now and then, when a friend visits or a classmate mentions the news story, Emily smiles and tells them, "I just did what I was supposed to." And that's the point, isn't it? We often think the world changes through speeches or big heroic acts. But sometimes it changes because a 10-year-old girl decided to do the right thing when no one was watching. At Millstone Elementary, students now wear little eagle pins every month as part of the Act with Honor campaign. And each pin begins with one name, Emily Parker. So maybe the lesson here isn't just about honesty, it's about believing that goodness still matters. That integrity is not old-fashioned. That kindness is still newsworthy. Because the smallest act, done with a full heart, can echo further than we ever imagine. And if Emily could change the world with a wallet and a walk to customer service, what might you do tomorrow?